I named those pillars in that order for a reason. So the only thing more powerful than the second pillar of Protestantism is the first pillar of whiteness, which dominates the Catholic Church as much as any other institution here. So, I mean, the reason you didn't hear about it is because...
Thank you, Nate.
As the black clergy said in 1968, the Catholic Church in the United States is primarily a white racist institution that, and I'm stopping the quote there, but after that they said it directs itself towards that demographic. That's who it's really talking to when it speaks. And I'm not sure that so much has changed in the 52 years.
I would have to agree with that. And from an objective Protestant, evangelical, mind you, who was born and bred and raised in the AG Church, a lot of my experience with Catholics was that of them being inherently racist, not even towards blacks, but towards other people too. That's the impression I got from them. And
Justin, I know you want to speak on that.
Man, like I think definitely to add to that, I think a big part of the issue is definitely spotlight in what has been shown as spotlight and what hasn't, because there's always been this from Tolton onward. There's always been the existence of black Catholic leaders within the church speaking out.
And even before.
Yeah, and so like you had people like I mean even more recent within the past like 50, 60 years, you had like when we finally did get a collection of black Catholic bishops, they were producing documents. Like one of those is called like what we have seen and heard. That was the name of one of the documents that was put out. Like another one like either that was in the 1980s or another one that's on my mind. I'm forgetting the name of it. It was also in the 1980s. But again, like there was stuff coming out, but of course, because like it's 3 million black Catholics, and because we're so much of a minority within the church, our voice and the voice of our issues and everything can get lost in the shuffle. And when you don't have a spotlight for that voice, then you don't hear that. And then another thing is that as far as like why you don't hear like, and then hear more like black Catholics kind of decrying racism. Like why haven't you heard that up until now? Like why there's been so much silence and stuff like that? Like one of those factors is to get the low numbers of, like, for one thing, like low numbers of black Catholics, but also especially even less than that, the low numbers of black clergy members and black Catholic leaders within the church, and what plays a role that is the systematic racism that was present way back then. I mean, like in terms of but not so way back then, really, because like just like you said, 1979. But what you have was, again, a systematic oppression within the church that kept black men and women from becoming priests and becoming religious. And so that goes all the way back to Tolton, to like well into the 20th century, to where there's like black people were systematically kept away from leadership within the church. And because they didn't have this leadership within the church, the people who would have spoken out, and also the people who maybe would have been influenced by those who spoken out, were not given that spotlight, not given that voice for so long. And if you have that as a situation in which people are held down or just like or just kind of marginalized to the side, and you don't hear certain voices speaking up, and especially those certain voices that would make us uncomfortable, we begin to sink into comfortability and begin to like what I'm trying to say, a sense of complacency. That's what like a sense of complacency, to where you don't get anything, you don't hear much until like George Floyd in 2020. I mean, it's like you don't hear much until much later, and then you coming out, and then you develop a sense of like a sense of like cultural, a sense of awareness and consciousness to it. But again, a lot of that is a definitely historical component to it, but also the after effects of that historical component. And then another thing was that, as far as like America in general, like I have an intuition that, like, again, you mentioned 1979 was when like you was a kid then when your local area was
desegregated,
finally desegregated.
Yeah,
I think the impression that I think people can get was that racism and segregation ended like in 1965, and then that's it. It was just a stop.
Right.
And there was nothing else after, and then everything else was fine after that point on.
Yeah.
And then, like, after, but of course, like, everything was still not fine, and there was still a development that needed to happen after that. But yeah, those are what's on my mind, like, as I spin it.
Just a short addendum to that is that same effect of there needing to be continued growth and action that really didn't necessarily occur after desegregation. The same thing needed to occur at the church after they finally let Black people start becoming priests and religious sisters in an unrestricted way. And that development didn't necessarily happen either, which is why there are still almost very few Black priests, few Black nuns.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is ongoing, just like public schools.
Yeah, which is why like the Black cardinal, the first American cardinal being named, and why that's so visible is so important.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Like, it's crucially important.
Yeah.
Like, because, like, just think about it. A black man in America can become pope.
Yes.
That's theoretically possible.
Yes.
It's
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's so, and it's visible, and I saw it like when it was made cardinal, that was not only in Catholic news, but that was in secular news as well.
That's where I read it.
It blew up.
That's where I read it.
Yeah.
And so, and so like it's so important to get that visual aspect of a Black cardinal, because then it says to young Black men, maybe just Black people in general. Okay, maybe I can become Catholic.
Yeah.
Maybe there are some Black Catholics that exist.
Yes.
And then it says to young Black men, maybe I can become a priest. And young Black men and women, and like maybe I can become a religious sister.
Absolutely.
All because there was a visible presence of somebody in the news.
Yeah.
And everything. So.
And that's why I know he catches a lot of flack, and I'm not going to ask for your opinions. I know he catches a lot of flack. He knows where I'm going with this. I'm a huge supporter of Pope Francis. I love Pope Francis.
My man.
I love Pope Francis. And I know people who don't like him, but I love Pope Francis. He has weeded out more of the old insecurities, more of the filth out of the church than any other pope in 200 years. I mean, he has removed more leadership that was not doing their job than any other pope before him. So, on top of that, he's progressive in his thinking. He brings about the first African American cardinal. You know, it's and then in his, I'm sure you heard in his speech when he brought up the first, I think it was over this last month. Yeah, over this last month, he did. He raised up the new cardinals, and the first thing he said was, "Make sure you do your job." It's like, yes, that's it. Because this is a man who's looking out for the little man. He does not want the aristocracy. You know what? He wants you to step up and protect the poor. Take care of people who are in need. I mean, so, again, I don't know where anybody stands. I'm not going to ask anybody, but I love Pope Francis.
I'll share with you, Aaron.
Juice, can I take a moment to synthesize Pope Francis challenges faced by people converting to Catholicism, and the lack of progress on racial equality in the church.
Go ahead, preach.
Oh yeah, good.
Go ahead.
I just finished this book a while back that I think relates to a lot of it. Kind of connects the dots on a lot of the mechanisms that I keep reinforcing. The idea of the Catholic Church being just for white people, and the broader issues with whiteness and Protestantism and how that bleeds into Catholicism. This book called Jesus and John Wayne: How White Evangelicals Corrupted a Faith and Fractured a Nation by Kristen Kobus-Dumez. And it connects these dots on how, with the rise of like mass media and with, preachers like Billy Graham and such, and how suddenly our primary faith teachers became these very politically connected, especially with early on segregationists and later on Republican, like hard right type stuff. So our primary teachers became these preachers on the radio. It was no longer our pastors. And kind of as I was joking before, talking about how, hey, Catholics often pick up on trends, 10 or 20 years after Protestants. We've done the same thing now where, it's oftentimes we're getting our primary faith information from, Catholic Answers or this particular, Catholic apologist or whatever. And maybe, only later when we're already Catholic, after conversion or reversion, then maybe we're talking to an actual priest. And it had me thinking about just like, this was a big blind spot when I was reverting, was that I was getting most of my information there. I was getting really just enveloped in, and it was basically all truth from something like Catholic Answers, but it was only certain pieces of truth. It was a lot about canon law and very moral particulars. And it was absolutely just, I gobbled it up because, a big challenge in not being Catholic was a lack of moral certitude. Like, Googling, is this thing a sin? And not really getting a clear answer because people are trying to derive it from the Bible as opposed to the catechism, which is like, this thing's a sin. This thing's not a sin. So I just totally ate this stuff up. And so then I'm going out and I am leading with, like, I'm on fire with all this information, and I want to tell people, hey, this is clarity, read this catechism, and these things are true, these things are false. If you don't believe this right now, you're a heretic. And I was leading with this total hard edge of Catholicism, which I think is often embraced by a lot of apostles that are really kind of got their tactics from the white evangelical radio and now internet preacher. And I just keep thinking back, if I could tell my past Catholic self one thing to actually be way more ecumenical from the beginning and not alienate people, and to also be more aware of, actual issues that really cut to the heart of our faith, which is like, how do we treat people? It's not how moral we are, which is important, but it's also, how do we care for our neighbor? And I would tell my past self, so make sure you're not just reading Catholic Answers or this particular apologist, but make sure you're reading it, like at least the writings of one pope. Like if I was as my past, in the process of reversion self reading, Fratelli Tutti, if that had been zapped in the past, that would just made such a difference in how I interacted with people and approached sharing my faith.
Yes. Good point. Yeah. So we're going to take a quick break and a word from our sponsors. All right, good. All right, let's break out the last brew. You had the Breckenridge, right?
Are we the only ones having beer, man?
Well, and Keith. That's why we do short glasses.
So I don't know.
That's why we do short glasses.
Seminary, you can't drink.
Oh, you'd be surprised. Like in terms of the seminarians and stuff. I mean, like this.
You saying y'all get turned? You saying y'all get turned?
I mean, like,
embarrassing, bro.
Oh, priests the seminarians be getting turned. Oh my God.
Like, I mean, I wouldn't use the word turned because that has a lot of implications and stuff to that.
But is it true?
But in terms of like, yeah, I mean, we get together, and have beers and stuff. At the seminary, when we have like our get-togethers and the whole seminary gets together. I mean, there's sodas and there's beers. There's there as well. I mean, the monks and stuff that teach us, and because my seminary, St. Monrad, is ran by Benedictine monks, because it's also like a abbey attached to the seminary and stuff as well. But again, I mean, drinking and stuff like that. But of course, as far as like getting drunk, I mean, of course, it's a no-no and everything. But yeah.
No, just the way you saying it, I know people getting drunk. Just the way you word it.
No, we whoa, holy cow!
Oh no!
That's one of the reasons that we do short classes, so that way you get a good taste without getting too far gone.
I was telling another podcast participant one time that we could expand the definition of brew to include things that aren't necessarily alcoholic. Like
that's heresy,
I've
brother.
been brewing my own. I was thinking about bringing that one time.
Holy cow! This thing was.
We want men to listen to the podcast.
Oh. Yeah, we definitely enjoy our brews and stuff, but we do not want to we don't want to get the wrong impression either. So no, but we have not done wine yet, but we will be doing wine. But we have done spirits. We have done different bourbons. So
I drink more in the politics shows.
But we do have
as we all should. But
we do have we do have a wine one coming up though. One of my students actually works at a winery. So yes, we will be doing wine as well.
I have no room to talk because I actually don't drink much at all. So that's why I'm not drinking a beer.
Yeah,
that's and that's fine.
Yeah, I'm the same thing. I don't really drink all that much. I don't know. I mean, I do have the occasional beer. Like when I'm with like people again. It's my buddies at the seminary, and it's like, hey man, you want a beer? Come to have a beer with us. All right, cool, man. Let's have a beer. That's all right. But like as far as like what I would choose to drink and like beer and everything, not the first thing. Again, I mean, I actually waited till I was 21 to drink, and again, it's just, I mean, I never got into it as much.
Wow.
But of course, but there's some alcohol that I think as but I think it's a gradual thing. Like as I try more, I begin to realize kind of what I do like. I remember having like margaritas and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, margarita's good.
Oh, I love a good margarita.
Yeah, I tried that for the first time earlier this year. I mean, and it's like, yeah, I mean,
yeah,
it was something like that, and people are having it, and it was like, yeah, I've never tried it before. Let's try it. So, like, even though I don't drink too much myself, like, I'm open to like alcoholic drinks and stuff like that in the proper context.
Yeah,
man. One of our podcasts we touched on the Ethiopian Orthodox and their brewers. Remember that?
Yeah, and that was really interesting. They actually have a whole thing. It's
as a part of their
in Ethiopia or there.
Yeah.
What's that?
In Ethiopia or there in Ohio?
No,
Ethiopia.
In Ethiopia.
Yeah, they have a whole thing when it comes to it.
As part of their culture with their religion.
Interesting, like the Lutherans.
Right. And okay, I have the info. I'm ready when you are.
I cheated.
It's okay.
We're ready.
Ready?
Yeah.
All right. And we're back. All right. Introducing our last brew of the night. We've got the multi full-bodied winter warmer. It is Breckenridge Christmas Ale. The chill of winter calls for a beer with extra flavor and strength, and this take on a classic strong ale does just that. It soothes the soul and warms the spirit. Flavors of caramel and chocolate are derived from an abundance of carefully roasted malts. Chinook and Mount Hood hops contribute a spiciness, lending balance and a clean finish. Christmas ale is a cozy holiday companion worthy of sharing. An IBV of 7.1, an IBU of 22. All right.
Aaron, I love when you read that.
Drool.
Thank you, sir.
I love when you read. Always makes me feel like a bit more like a sinner.
Cheers. Right off the get-go, this one is very heady. This thing, like...
Darker.
Oh, man, it popped up. There was so much foam on the top, I had to let it go to fill up a little more.
That's probably a lot to do with how it's packaged.
This is true. Gumbi was kind enough to bring an entire mini keg.
It's beautiful. It's the holidays. It's 2020.
And it is darker. I mean, if I look through this, it's got a very deep walnut to it. If you look, if you're on camera right now, that has a very deep walnut. It's beyond amber.
Is that a very Skypeable beer as well, Keith?
The foam really stuck out. Like it just shined. Like it almost blinded you. I thought I was entering heaven for a moment.
It has a very, the aroma is very subtle,
It is
I think,
subtle.
on the top. I think it's very subtle. It's a warm aroma. I would say it's almost aromatic. Yeah. Oh, wow. That is really smooth. I mean, with this being the deep walnut that it is, I fully expected this to be a little more bitter, but it's not. That is
really good.
So smooth.
It's unique.
Yeah, like everything's subtle and blends so well. Like I catch little bits of, like, say, nutmeg, little bits of, maybe a cinnamon in there, maybe, but it's so subtle. It all kind of blends together nicely.
In the right way, almost like a woody taste to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
In the right way.
Exactly that, yeah. Like, if you were to roast something on the grill and you only used a good wood, this is kind of that flavor you would get out of it.
This is, I'm really happy about it.
Yeah.
I'm crying.
Breckenridge, wow. Man, I don't know. 12 Gut Dogs might have some competition.
Mm-hmm. It's all good.
That's really good.
Keith, there's a whole lot of that one if you need me to bring it to you, man.
Oh, I would absolutely not turn that down. No, you could leave it on my doorstep.
Pretty special.
All right, you're going to have a little bit of this nice walnut coming to you.
Oh. It just occurred to me with that mouth-watering description is how fun would it be if we wrote a description just like that for, like, Budweiser? Like, how long can we draw it out?
But the trouble with that is I would have to do a confession afterwards because I'd be lying.
Yeah.
Slight hint of urine overwhelms your palates.
Lightning would strike, Aaron.
Although I will say that Budweiser has been buying some good brands lately. So Budweiser proper not being one of those.
Yeah, watch out for that, man.
So you touched on something that I found interesting. Going into the, I wouldn't say overtly, I would say actually the undertones of not even racism. I think it's cultural. And that's where I think, from knowing my friends, I think there's a cultural context to the things that you're saying. For example, I'm Czech, okay? So Veverka, right? So I'm Czech. And I'm only third generation in this country. So my family's not been here that long. And we don't have that background. The Czech Republic was actually never part of the African slave trade. We never had slaves. So coming here, like my brother dates a black girl, right? One of my, I hate to say it's one of my exes was half Puerto Rican. My daughter dates somebody who's half black. That it's on our side. There's not really that racist overtone or undertone, or culturally, I think it's a little bit different. However, that being said, some of my other friends assume that because I'm a white-headed bald guy,
I didn't even notice.
they immediately assume that I'm one of them, right? So, like, I can't tell you how many times working, right? And really, I think that's like a reverse racism, because I've had friends walk over me and just give me a racist joke and then smile like I'm supposed to laugh. And it's like one of those things where it's like, dude, I'm not
racism.
Right, exactly. Right. I was like, dude, I think you're telling that joke to the wrong person. I might be white and bald, but I don't think you understand. So I wonder if some of those are cultural context. Like if you look into like the deep Spanish or French or even British, they have backgrounds of slavery. So I almost wonder if there's still undertones in certain cultures that carry forward to today. I mean, what do you think on that?
I don't think it's undertones. Once America decided to run with whiteness, because they didn't always. They used to be like you needed to be a certain national background to be a part of their little club. Once they decided to do away with that and let all the Italians in and all the Irish people in, like it became less about national culture and more about a power structure that people could benefit from here in America, here in the United States. So, I mean, even your example of a near immigrant ancestry that has no connection to the African slave trade, like how quickly can that become just another white racist person in America?
Yeah.
Like, it's the Lord's grace that it didn't happen in your family, but like so many other families that are recent immigrants, like as soon as they could benefit from anti-blackness, they hopped onto it. And at the end of the day, who wouldn't? If you feel like this is going to get me the better job, this is going to get me more money, this is going to help me protect what I think is most important about my existence in America, like it doesn't take a whole lot for people to flip that switch and say, yeah, I'm gonna be racist now.
Yeah,
it was actually a gateway to a lot of groups, a lot of immigrant, white immigrant groups getting legitimacy with basically you can sum up all of most of a white American history of immigrant white groups trying to see how they can become white, like the the Ku Klux Klan in the 30s. Like a lot of groups, that was kind of a way in. It's like, hey, if I become a Klan member, now I'm in with everybody else. And then from there, I mean, it kind of, you're passing that social DNA through the rest of your family, and that just can infect generations.
Yeah.
And to add to that, like I think that's why it's important not to see, I guess, America come. I mean, like the past history of America, like the racism that's within it, as purely from like a legal point of view in terms of how we came out of it. What I mean by that is that even if you get the right laws passed, just because something is legally supposed to be the case doesn't mean that it's going to be actually the case. And so like that goes into the cultural aspect, is when laws change and you still have people thinking the way that they do. That's the cultural aspect of it. And that culture has been tainted with, again, like the sin of racism, the sin of unjust discrimination, and like again, and it's part of, like, broadly speaking, the fallen nature of man, the fallen creation that still needs to be redeemed by the blood of Jesus. And so, like, definitely when you get into like the cultural factor and the advantages that saying this kind of racist thing or saying this whatever about whatever is going to get me places, that say the right things is going to give me the right things, then that definitely comes down to the cultural aspect that still that doesn't answer why people don't change even when we get the right laws passed and stuff. So yeah,
and that's part of why those guys came up to you, Aaron, and were like, "Are you one of us?" Like it was a social play, a power play that most people they try it with, it probably works, and they're like, "Oh yeah, he's one of us. He can do these things with us." he'll receive these social benefits. But I mean, it's wild how we do these things kind of under the radar, and we could talk about it as racism, as this just behavior that certain people engage in, but it's really about power and how we're going to organize our social lives. And yeah. And also I wanted to say that one of the main criticisms of America is about giving up your ethnic and national background.
Yeah.
And that's part of how we're in the mess in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're saying?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And to that end, when I was doing some work with some union guys doing some concrete stuff, and I thought the guy was joking who I was working with. He was telling me that even the unions today, they are still segregated, even amongst each other. The Irish versus the Italians versus whatever, and who controls the markets of how much work is being flowed through and where you could find that work. And if your pension will be, if you'll be able to get your pension.
Yeah.
Because I know a guy who he decided to do some politics. He was in the union. He ran on the wrong side. And because of that, to this day, he can't get his pension.
Oh, wow.
And they won't say that's what it is. But he knows exactly that's why it is. And so I still see that today. It's very alive and very real. My question is, because we are a nation of so many different ethnicities, so many different backgrounds, do you really think that it's ever going to go away?
No.
I almost kind of want to ask, what do you mean by go away? Like it vanishes completely 100%, or go away in the sense that maybe like 98% of the people are not racist or not like prejudiced in any way, and it's like you still have this like 2% that's still crazy. So like, So I guess I pose that question back to you. What do you mean by?
Well, when I think of Christ's message in the New Testament, I mean, he obviously the political climate there was very crazy, just as it is today.
Yeah.
But if he was preaching today that same message to all of us, which in a way he still is, and I acknowledge that, but there's so many more ethnicities now here that it's harder. That same message that he preaches is so much more harder, I think, here to even come. When he was just having to deal with the Samaritan woman at the well and how that was perceived, it's times 1,000 here now, right? So,
I mean,
what is it? When do we arrive? Like, when does that go away?
Probably when Jesus comes back, really. I mean, because I agree with Nate in the sense that there's always going to be that type of prejudice. There's always going to be a type of racism there because, because our daily interaction with people and like this person of this race did something bad to me, therefore all of them are like this. Or this certain group of people have this part of the neighborhood, and that neighborhood is always junky and messed up and ghetto and stuff like that. And so if that community is predominantly one color or another or whatever, that stigma of how ghetto or whatever that community is going the conditions of the social condition of that community is going to be attached to the people of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are just two different ways. There's a myriad of different ways in which these types of things can pop up and always be present amongst people. And I think it's ultimately, when we as Christians, when we talk about this issue of racism and discrimination, we can't forget the theological element of it as Christians, and even the eschatological part of it in terms of you're always going to have this around because our status, the universal status, is us as sinners. And we as people will never be able to get rid of that because we are sinners.
Yeah.
We'll never be able to get rid of that because sin is always going to exist. We're never going to get rid of that, just as we can never get rid of sin in general. That's God's job. That's Jesus's job. And so until Jesus comes back and ushers in the new creation, ushers in the new heaven and a new earth, and gives us our redeemed bodies, which includes a redeemed mind.
Yeah.
Like until we become new creations in Christ, not just in soul, but when he gives us our redeemed bodies at the resurrection, and then we receive glorified bodies and also glorified minds. That's when like what we're talking about, racism and everything, is going to end. And we can only hope now to change hearts and minds to the extent that we can.
Yeah.
Like now, but of course, like not there's a temptation there when I say that this is not going to end until Jesus comes back. There's a temptation to fatalism that could be there. Oh, we can't control it. But no, it's like just because we're not going to be able to realize this desired reality until God himself brings it. That's why, like, we still exist in this situation that we do, so that we can rely on God, and so God can change us in this life to prepare us for the life to come. And by changing our hearts and minds away from racism, away from various forms of discrimination, we choose love now, so that we can choose love for all eternity.
Yeah.
And the less that we choose love now, the harder it will be to choose, the less we choose in eternity. And God is love. And so choosing love means choosing God. Yeah. And if you don't want to love now, you're not going to want to love into eternity. When that's all you got in eternity is God, is love, because God is love, and for all eternity and everything. So
yeah,
that's good. That's a real good response.
That's beautiful.
You sucker punched me though. You sucker punched me with the theology side of the Catholic Church. So now I'm curious, because I'm not a Catholic. Do Catholics believe in the rapture? I didn't.
No. That's the heresy of Chiliasm.
Okay, so when you say, like, clarify or unpack a little more for me so I can understand the Catholic perspective, Jesus coming back, what does that mean?
When he comes back, that's it.
That's it. When he comes back.
No, I need more than that. Come on. Come on. I got 1, 2, 3, 4 astute Catholics. You can give me a little more than that.
Yeah. I guess
because I know what it means from the Protestant side. Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, you get. I think as far as what the Catholic Church requires us to believe, definitely is Jesus will come back, and then it bounces to the question of, like, okay, what I said before. What is the Catholic Church requires us to believe, and then what is in the realm of theological opinion, because of that gap that's between what we know from Revelation and what we may and the things that we don't quite know as clear, that may be further defined and extrapolated by the church throughout time. But so I say that to say this: I don't think there's one. There may not be, and someone can correct me on this. And again, I'm only in first theology, so I'm still early on. So, I don't think from my view that there's any one Catholic viewpoint in regards to how exactly the last things are going to occur. So I think there may be room for theological speculation as to how exactly it was going to come about. But there's certain things that are ruled out. Like in terms of like certain theological propositions are ruled out, and I think the rapture is one of those things that's ruled out, but at least generally ruled out as not going to occur. But as far as like when the tribulation is going to occur, and like okay, and what we talk about when we say like the reign of Christ for 1,000 years, what does that mean? I think like it's a question, even kind of coming up as a Catholic perspective on that is definitely a question for your own personal research in regards to seeing the different Catholic perspectives that are probably there throughout the course of like trying to describe, okay, how exactly are the last things going to occur? But that's all within the framework of certain things that we have to believe, and that comes directly out of Revelation, comes directly out of the deposit of faith, as in Jesus Christ, he's going to come back, and when he comes back, it will be visible, and he will do what we say in the creed he's going to do. He will come back to judge the living and the dead.
Yep.
And his kingdom will be no end.
Amen.
Yes.
Like that's bottom line, what we have to believe.
I think. Now, go ahead.
How is that going to occur leading into like his second coming? As far as
it's up for debate.
We don't know, and so we probably have different perspectives on that.
And that's where I think there's a bit of because I was deep into that Protestant theology side where it's like, well, he's going to come again, and then there's 1,000 years, and there's, but Justin Martyr was one of the things that he believed that the church actually kicked out was he believed in Chiliasm, which is Christ comes again, then he leaves for 1,000 years, and it comes back, and which theologically doesn't actually make sense, because if he has to do that, then why did he die the first time? It's like, so that is one of those things that I think was great that the church established was like, no, when Christ comes again, he comes again, and he's here to stay.
That's it.
Yeah. So it's like, he's here. And what the 1,000 years is, we can debate that all day long. I don't think anybody has an established timeline of what that is. Maybe it started, when Christ left. Maybe because 1,000 in the Bible, it just means a long time, right? Because I literally went through the Bible and researched every time 1,000 comes up, and every time it's an arbitrary number, that means a long time. So, yeah.
So, as a Protestant, one of the things. Oh, go ahead, Keith. Go. You got it.
I was going to say that point. So, a fun thing about Catholicism is we get to play a little bit fast and loose sometimes with certain things that seem very literal in the Bible. Like this was a great benefit when I was debating atheists on the internet, was when I could be like, well, wait, we're just not supposed to take that part that super literally. And all these other people from thousands of years ago did think that literally meant 1,000 years, or that meant 100 bushels, or whatever particular number you're talking about. So it's convenient.
And that's a great point to bring up as far as the connection with the way certain atheists interpret the Bible. Like what I've noticed for years is that some atheists, again, not all, but some atheists will interpret the Bible as literally as fundamentalists do, in terms of like the Bible means one thing, and you can only get this certain view out of Scripture. Otherwise, you're just cherry picking or something. You're just like trying to get it to say what you want it to say because you're uncomfortable with something. There's a tension that you're trying to resolve there. But of course, that's not the case. There's always nuance when interpreting the Bible, and there's the different senses by which we can look at Scripture. It's of course, Bishop Barron, in one of his videos, early videos, he talked about how, yes, we take the Bible literally, but not literalistic. We take the Bible literally in the sense that we look at the text that's present before us, and whatever type of text that it is, that's our interpretive lens into what that text might mean. And so if a text is poetry, then we interpret it through a poetic lens. If the text is more historical, then we interpret it through historical lens. And then from whatever type of text that is, we look at it that way. And then bouncing off of that, then we get the historical context and stuff like that, the cultural context, the linguistic context. And then we also bring in the different senses of scripture that the catechism talks about, like the spirit, like this goes back to even the earliest, like church fathers talking about this under different names. So like the spiritual sense, the analogical sense, like in Christological sense, different types of senses that we look at scripture. And so there's a lot of nuance by which we get the interpretive lens. And I think a lot of atheists, especially that have been influenced by the new atheist movement, look at the Bible very simplistically, just as simplistically as some Christians do. And that's the case in which they get it wrong.
Oh, I agree. I mean, because even if you look at historians of the time, they don't write that way. So why would we assume that the Bible writes that way? You know, if you go into Herodotus, right? Herodotus, an early historian, say, be the BC era, he goes through and he writes in allegory and he writes in colorful metaphor, right? So why would we assume the Bible would be different? It's if you look at any one of those, it really is a telltale sign that they wrote according to the culture of the time. Yeah. So I agree. Yeah. My boy, Bishop Barron. I'm a proud member of the Word on Fire Institute. We're going to go to our next section. Before we do that, we're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors.
Hey, it's Gumbi here from Bible Over Brews. Are you looking to get some editing done in your podcast? Maybe you don't have the hours or time it takes to edit your content, but you still need to get it done. Maybe you need a customized track or a song for your podcast or your next project without having to worry about copyright issues. Well, look no further than soulworkmusic.com, where this footwork is done for you. I'll get that editing, post-production work done right for you, or create you that customized song that fits your project or podcast to help support your life's work. If this sounds like what you need, reach out to me at soulworkmusic.com. Again, that's soulworkmusic.com. And remember, there's nothing taboo over brew.
Yeah.
This definitely kind of comes back to some of the I think how Catholicism is, in theory at least, better equipped to handle some of the heresies of Americanism, so to speak. Some of the just the bad tendencies we've gotten in American Christianity, because it's always been a little bit more immune to this particular interpretation of saying this means this very literal thing, and once you have that, it's very easy for a preacher to take that and kind of infect a ton of minds and to warp scripture in ways that can serve political ends, can serve ends to promote one race over another or races against each other. But it also illustrates, too, one of the challenges, I think, in Catholicism today is we do have a lot of groups that are now trying to take a specifically Catholic twist on that same kind of heresy and taking specific Catholic teachings and twisting them to say that, well, no, the only real Catholicism is the one that, does the Tridentine Latin Mass or, does a certain other thing, which is really kind of all heresies throughout history have happened, is someone saying, no, it means this very specific thing that is different than what we taught before. So I remain hopeful, though, because we do have this foundation where we're always a little bit outside of that bubble. And Pope Francis, I think, does a great job of pulling us out of that bubble.
My boy.
I used to tell folks a few years ago when he was talking about certain things and be like, this sounds weird to me. And I'd be like, keep in mind, Pope Francis isn't always talking to Americans because he's from South America and he lives in Italy and he's talking to the whole world. And after reading Fratelli Tutti, I'm like, guess what? He's now talking to Americans really loud and clear.
Agreed.
Are you guys familiar with Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano?
Oh, Lord.
We probably don't want to go there.
He's in the news.
That's a whole episode right there.
Are you
Vigano? Yeah.
controversy around him.
Oh yeah, yeah. We could do a whole episode. Let's plan a whole episode for that in the future.
Wait. All right.
Episode? Oh, Lord.
Wait a minute. So because of our recent, like events going on in our country, politically and both spiritually and religiously, he wrote a letter to Trump, an open letter to Donald Trump. So hey, don't cover your head. This is
what that man did.
good or bad, right or wrong. It is one of your Catholic leaders.
No,
Nope.
not everybody. Not everybody with a title is a Catholic leader.
Thank you.
An archbishop. So what would he be?
He's archbishop of like a titular see, which means he's not in charge of anything. He just has a title.
Yep, that's it.
So he's not a leader in the Catholic Church.
Nope.
No, so the Pope sometimes will name an archbishop or even a cardinal of a place that has no actual people, no Catholic diocese, no flock, nobody to look over. It's just the title that he's giving them of honor, and in some cases that person might be a scholar or serve in some other role that has nothing to do with that physical place.
Wow.
Like there's bishops over places in Europe that live here in America, because that place doesn't matter. It's a titular seat, but he's one of those. Nobody has any idea where he's at right now.
He's in hiding.
In the place where
Archbishop
right
of
now.
Old Piano, wherever that is.
Yeah, it could be. It might not. I can't say it doesn't exist because it probably exists, but yeah, he's not a leader over any group of people other than American right wing.
So
yeah, I was gonna say.
Wait, say that again. American what?
Right wing.
Right wing.
Oh, the trads love him.
So that even exists within the Catholic Church.
That's his flock.
The trads.
Simply put, as Catholics, we're instructed to defer to our bishop on teaching, to take his instructions seriously. But all the people amplifying his teaching, he's none of their bishop.
Go ahead.
He's contradicting most of their bishops.
I go ahead.
I'd like to add to, I like to add some stuff on like Cardinal. I mean, not Cardinal, but Archbishop Veverka. As far as like his position within the church, as far as his leadership is concerned, the reason why he's big in the news is because at least his past position within of leadership within like the American church, he was the apostolic nuncio to the United States, basically, which is a very I can't tell you exactly all what a papal nuncio does. I'm not as versed on that, but that's a very influential position within the church, because he's basically the Pope's man in America in terms of I'm describing like what a nuncio is in general, not necessarily Veverka. But what a nuncio is basically like the Pope's man in America, as far as like him guiding in some sense like the leadership of the speaking for the Pope, or kind of relaying like the what's going on in America to the Pope and everything like that. Though of course like there's a hierarchy in America that has its own forms of leadership. That has its own form of leadership. So again, he like to add a bit of nuance to the discussion about him. Again, and by the way, I'm not speaking as like a big apologist for Pagano necessarily, but again, like he's an archbishop, and so he was like a valid type of leader in the church, and as a bishop, he still is a part of the magisterium of the church, and the magisterium of the church is the teaching authority of the church, and so he still has like a sense of valid leadership within the church. Now, I think what Nate is getting at is that Nate can correct me if I'm not getting his perspective right. But when he says that he's not a leader in the church, maybe like he's not a leader that maybe Catholics should be looking towards because of like his connections to Trump and right wing can't speak like Trump's to the conservative political perspective and everything like that. But like and again, he was a previous archbishop of the church, and so again, but ultimately, he does have some leadership within the church, as far as him being a bishop within the church and having that influence by the virtue of being a bishop, and also his participation within the magisterium of the church. But of course, you can recognize his leadership in the church and not agree with how he's using that leadership in the church.
Sure. Yeah.
And so then you get into like these issues of and again, and like when I see some of the stuff he's doing, I kind of cringe in terms of how connected he's becoming with Trump and like
that was my point to bringing the whole thing up.
A particular like political kind of point. And again, I would say the same thing if you have like a bishop like that was being too close to Joe Biden or something like that. It's like because of course the church and like the church speaks God's truth to the world, and so Catholicism can have it can have a touch in a lot of different pies, because the church speaks the truth to the world. Ultimately, it speaks the truth of Jesus Christ to the world, and Jesus is Lord of all our aspects of life, which includes the political sphere. And so the church can validly have some type of perspective in regards to political issues. But of course, the church should and always should respect the particular realm, the different realms that there are, and not get too involved in it, because then when you mix politics and religion in a bad way, then things can become messy. And so now you have this aspect of Archbishop Pagano, I guess to get again, I don't know beyond what I've said. Yeah, I don't know too much about him, but
so
as far as like the deeper things that he said, but of course, I'm sorry,
the contents of his letter, in my opinion, reading it as a Protestant, somebody who's objective kind of to the Catholic Church, doesn't know a whole lot about the Catholic Church, throws the Catholic Church under the bus, which I see time and time again in our mainstream media. The Catholic Church bears the brunt of a lot of the things that are wrong with Christianity. And I will always give you guys this defense as a Protestant. I can see that. In terms of I can read the news every day and find I don't know how many articles to sex abuse, right?
Right.
Yeah.
As if it doesn't exist anywhere else. I can see things for what they are, but when I saw this connected to Trump in the context of what he was talking about, he was protesting and basically saying that the riots and the protests that were happening was a whole part of the quote unquote Great Reset that's happening in the world. And
it's about dang time.
And so that was his argument, and that I could read the whole thing, but I'm not going to do that. But what baffled me is that he had Trump's ear,
Yeah.
That baffled me.
And I'll back you on that, because my Protestant friends tried to use that letter in supporting everything Trump does, because they were like, oh yeah. They were like, oh, look, even your church supports this. And I was like,
People don't know that. So let me clarify what I said before. When I said he's not a leader, I didn't mean to say that he's not or never was an archbishop. My point is that this man is currently in exile. He is in hiding. Most Protestants don't know this about him. But he's writing that letter from an unknown location because he is not, as far as I know, in good standing with the rest of the leadership of the Catholic Church. If Pope Francis excommunicated him tomorrow, it wouldn't even be surprising to me, because before Trump was already doing wild stuff, subterfuge. I can't say espionage because I don't know who he was spying for. But he was doing underhanded stuff already that had him in hot water, such that he felt the need to go into hiding well before Trump was, well before now, well before this current period, well before the protests, well before he was connected to a presidential administration. So
interesting.
That's the background that most Protestants don't know. And so we can't look at what he's saying and say, oh, well, he's one of your guys. It's like, technically, yes. But at the same time, he's not been one of our guys, in a real sense, for a little while now.
Yeah.
A beauty of the magisterium of the church, the continuous teaching throughout history, and, the college of just all these bishops and popes together continuously teaching the Catholic faith. The beauty of that is that when a bishop goes rogue, like Vigano, it's easy to tell in the context of the faith why that's wrong, why what he's saying is wrong. And that gives me a lot of hope, is that I can point to 1,000 things that say this is why I should take the political musings of this guy seriously, even if he's in a position where I should respect his teaching on faith and morals.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that, like, of course, like as far as like the office that he holds as a bishop, that's due respect. But of course, you can disagree with like some of the things that he might be saying, or like as far as using his own his own personal, especially personal views in regards to things that are not faith and morals and stuff. And so I think and this is why the nuances is like in this discussion is very important, because it starts to affect, and why like a clergy member needs to be careful about what he says and how he says it and whom he associates with, because that right there becomes a representation of the church. Even in my position right now as a seminarian, like I have to watch what I say, because even what I say can be taken as some type of representation of the church, and I'm not even a clergy member yet. But it's just what people take and run with it. And so people look at Vigano and like even non-Catholics will say, hey, Vigano, this y'all guy, he's saying these things. Therefore, maybe all Catholics agree with him or should be down with him in some way. But the thing about it, but the bottom line thing about what we should take from the Vigano case is what Keith was talking about, is his point about the magisterium of the church. It's like the church teaches what the church teaches and proclaims to be revealed by God, and is one thing, and we can look in Scripture, we can look at the Catechism, we can look at like the various forms by which the deposit of faith has been expressed throughout the various means, and then we can see what the Catholic Church teaches. And then once we have what the Catholic Church teaches the truth and what the gospel is, and then use that as a way we can view the lens, we can use that as a lens to view what even bishops are saying. And so if one bishop, if you read his writings and one bishop is not matching up with what the gospel says, what the Bible says, what the church has always proclaimed, then you can check them out on that and stuff, like as far and then say, okay, like regardless of what he's saying, I know what I am to believe as a Catholic.
Yeah.
And if somebody is saying something that's not vibing with that, then I'm probably not gonna mess with you, because I need to be down with what Jesus and his church is saying. Yeah. And again, I'm not as versed as the context of what Vigano is saying. Because shoot, man, I'm a busy seminarian, man. I got papers to write and everything.
Oh yeah,
like
no
that.
doubt, no doubt.
And so like I ain't got time. But as far as the other Catholics that are here and even our non-Catholic friend, if this is a chance to learn what the Catholic Church, what the Catholic faith is, and match up with what you see people saying about it.
Yeah. I got that. We got that on the Protestant side. We got Jim Baker.
What I do love about when I moved into the Catholic Church was, remember I said that U2 song, I still haven't found what I'm looking for? After I moved over, it's the first time in my life, religiously and philosophically, because we have some of the best philosophers. Thomas Aquinas, my boy, right? Moving over, I never felt the need to search again, because I had a complete library of my faith. And
Yes.
I never had to divert away from that again. And it brought such peace to me to realize, you know what, I can just trust, my Father in Christ, down here, my Pope's not going to lead me astray. My priests, by and large, are not going to, especially as a collective body, are not going to leave me astray. Because even when because we did have a few bad popes, even those popes never changed theology. They never changed the magisterium. They never changed the architecture. The hierarchy. So you can have faith in that, right? You can fall back in that and say, you know what, I'm not going to be steered wrong. And there was a huge amount of peace lifted off of me that I never experienced before. And if I say nothing else to all of my struggling Protestant brothers and sisters, I was so hard up, going back and forth. Well, is there cessationism? Is it not cessationism? There was such diversity back and forth between I literally could not sleep at night because of trying to think, well, should I be more Calvinist or Arminianism? Should I be I struggled so hard in that. And when I came over to Catholicism, the amount of relief I had to realize that all of my research led to this, and I didn't have to struggle anymore. And I could just fully believe in one church body. There was such peace of mind that I still have now. It's beautiful. I can't express how much peace of mind there is in that.
You think no Protestant has that? Open question.
I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think many Protestants do, but it's not necessarily based. It's not a house built on the rock, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like what I'll add to that is that you touched on something that is important to bring up as far as ultimately what a deep question in which was there and what you had that's at the heart of your searching is the proper authority. Who in the teaching authority? Who has the authority to teach in Christ's name? Is it me in my own interpretation of Scripture? Is that the final arbiter? Is that the final authority? If you think it is, then I have to say, well, it must be tough being Pope, because you become your own Pope. You become your own, because if the Bible is alone is supposed to be our sole authority, basically the sole authority of faith, but in addition to that, our interpretation of what the Bible says, then and that's it in regards to ultimately your sense of teaching authority, then it's going to be it may be tough in regards to that. But not every Protestant may struggle with that because I guess to be fair, you have some Protestants, especially when you go into the Anglicans and that do look back to church history, and they look at the church fathers as well, and they will and they look at Scripture as well, and they will say the consensus of the church fathers and the consensus of at least the first 7 ecumenical councils, and the testimony of church history, and the content of Scripture adds up together, and to preach the right thing, but you're still missing ultimately a central authority that has the proper authority, even to determine the canon of Scripture, or to determine what council is ecumenical or not. You still got to have a central authority, and that speaks in Jesus' name because it was established by Jesus to lead and guide the faithful under the guidance of the Holy Spirit. Yeah. And for Catholics, we look and say that's the Catholic Church with the magisterium of the church, the bishops in union with the Pope, speaking in his name, going all the way back to, because Christ said to Peter, "You are rocking upon this rock to build my church," and he said, and Luke, "Comfort my brothers, comfort them," and so.
And what's mind blowing in that, and I don't know, most Protestants probably don't know this, the Vatican literally sits on the bones of Peter. His tomb is right underneath the Vatican.
This Protestant knew that.
But
Everybody knows that.
My ultimate question then for you guys, then for me as a quote unquote, I call myself like a recovering evangelical, because I'm the biggest critic and I'm the first critic of the way I was brought up with an organized religion, and I'm just going to call it that for what it is. But what does that mean for us? And for many of those who may be like me or many millions of other Protestants, are we on the road to hell?
No.
So what the issue of authority, because we're always hung up on that between us, right?
Yeah, but even right within our catechism, we believe that you can still find salvation. That's what is that? Around 840, I believe, in the catechism.
Yeah, and the Orthodox and the Syrian Church of the East, they don't have the Pope either, but the Church readily says all their sacraments are valid, and there's never even the hint that they're going to hell.
Yeah.
In Catholic teaching. So I mean, Protestants having fewer sacraments, wouldn't necessarily, exile them from heaven. But at the same time, we would say, just like we would say to the Orthodox and the Syrian Church of the East, come on back under the Pope. We got room.
Yeah.
So is the protest over?
What protest?
The protest.
That's up to you guys, not us.
So
whenever y'all finished, the doors are open.
We're not protesting.
Yeah. But in a way, everybody kind of protested back then. I mean, the protest happened. The schism happened.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. That's the thing. Protests were not new at the time of the Reformation. What was somewhat new was the creation of a new church, and one that has lasted so long, which is partially due to the political climate of that time.
Yep.
When people had tried that before, it just didn't last. So, I mean, that's really the issue, is that what Luther needs to do was to protest without leaving, which he did for a time. And that's what Protestants should do today. If there are issues that you see that are legitimate, this is coming from me and Nate Tenner, become Catholic and protest those things from the inside and stop, yelling at us from across the street.
Right? Oh no, I got my grievances with my own people. So,
and I really think the only thing that helped Luther from the previous divisions that existed before him was he had a printing press. I think that was really the only really differentiating
Major
thing.
factor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if I could add to I guess his question, and I guess in answering this question, first I would say, if you want to see like answering this particular question as far as other questions as well from a theological point, from a Catholic perspective, but also he also brings in non-Catholics as well to talk about these issues. If you heard of Reason and Theology on YouTube, the YouTube channel Reason and Theology, a guy named Michael Lofton, he runs it, and he talks about this particular question. So, in particular Catholic perspective in regards to this, I was just listening to one of his episodes about it. So, that's what I would pass on to you as far as because he mentions, okay, we have all this teaching. What does it mean for Protestants? It's basically everybody who's not Catholic. The church does have a teaching. I mean, you don't have to go far to find this. The church does have the firm teaching that there's no salvation outside the church. What does that mean? And what I have to say as a Catholic, and especially as a Catholic, as a man who was trying to become a priest, I preach what the church teaches, even if it's hard. The church does teach that there's no salvation outside the church. What that means for Protestants is that the church wants everybody to become Catholic. Everybody should be Catholic, because just because we say so, because Jesus Christ established the church, and there's one church. And that church is supposed to be the organ by which all men are gathered together under the one flock, under the one shepherd who's Christ. And on earth, his shepherd, and on earth, his church is led by the Pope. And so everybody's supposed to be in union with the Pope, in union with the teaching authority of the church, because the church is the only authority Christ gave to the church, to the world, to preach in his name and to preach the gospel and to save souls with the sacraments. And so, as far as non-Catholics are concerned, can they go to heaven? Yes, that's theoretically possible. But two things. Like, non-Catholics can go to heaven in spite of, not because of, but basically in spite of all the things they believe that is contrary to the Catholic faith, but also if they have what we call invincible ignorance. If a non-Catholic, a Protestant, especially a Protestant or Orthodox, live their life in regards to the faith as they know it, and they never come into contact with the fullness of the church, the fullness of the fullness of the faith that the church possesses. They never come through no fault of their own, and they live the gospel to the best of their ability. That person could go to heaven. It's possible. But of course, the best way that person is going to get to heaven is by being Catholic, is by living the fullness of the faith as it has been passed down from Jesus to the apostles unto now. And we don't know if somebody outside the church is going to be saved through that route. But of course, if somebody comes into knowledge of the fullness of the truth, just like if somebody comes into contact with the knowledge that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, and rejects that, and of course we can't be the judge of whether somebody has fully come into contact with the faith in their mind and has rejected that in their heart. That's left up to God. If a person comes into the fullness of the faith and knows in their heart that this is the truth and rejects it, then that person will not be saved. And again, that person is not has purposely not united himself with the one body of Christ, which is the Catholic Church. And so, like, if a person comes to the contact and the knowledge that the church, that the Catholic Church is the church that Jesus Christ established, and he should belong to this church, and rejects it, then that person's salvation is in jeopardy. But of course, if somebody doesn't know and never comes to the contact with the fullness of the faith, they simply never know. It's possible that person will go to heaven, but it's always best if that person becomes Catholic and comes and lives the life that the church calls that person to live, and God calls that person to live through the church. And so, like, that's what I have to say in regards to that question, to try to be like as clear as possible and as honest as possible from my understanding of the church's teaching. And I have to be that.
Oh yeah,
especially because I'm trying to be a priest.
Absolutely.
That's a great answer. And that's one as a Protestant I've never heard.
And so if I've said anything wrong about the Catholic faith, if I've something
then your
that's
salvation
wrong,
is in jeopardy.
Then check me up on that. Check me up on that, and like check what I've said against the teachings of the church, against the teachings what the church says, and again and follow that. I'm trying to be as faithful as I can as try to disseminate the teachings of the church and stuff. And so,
no, well put, well put.
No, yeah. I agree with it. Actually, that's the first time I've ever heard that from the Catholic point of view, in terms of their.
Aaron, what you've been telling him?
He's not listening.
Hey, I'm solid in my faith. I have been, and like I said, I'm the first to critique my own. You know, I've heard some Protestant pastors talk, you know, when they talk about when they're trying to raise money and all of that. So whatever, but they'll talk about heaven and they'll talk about the end times and they say, hey, when we get up to heaven, yes, you're probably going to see some Catholics up there. And, you know, they'll even acknowledge that. But except from tonight, maybe it's been hard pressed to hear that from the Catholic point of view, to accept it. Well, all right, maybe we aren't the only right one. maybe the church is bigger than just the Catholic Church. It's never been that way both ways.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Gumbi. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. But to hear that, perspective and say that maybe someone can come to the gospel and the fullness of the gospel and still be saved from the Catholic theology sounds like, okay, so yeah, I don't know how else to say, guys, a way out.
Let me cut off Keith for like 30 seconds and say,
No problem. Go ahead.
You will probably find more Catholics on planet Earth that affirm Protestants can be saved than you will find evangelical Protestants that affirm Catholics can be saved.
Maybe. My mom was a Catholic for 40 years. I'm not unfamiliar with the traditions and the culture aspect of it. So I'm just saying,
I don't have that.
Specifically from
most Catholics in the world are
specifically from the theology. That's I appreciate it because that's important information to know.
Yeah.
For me, it's a connecting point. It makes me want to keep my heart and my mind open.
Yeah. And being former Protestant myself, I can also say that that's something that my Protestant parents and family would say too, is like, well, there are some Catholics who are saved. Right, exactly. Keith.
All right. So, Gumbi, I felt the weight of your questions from two very different perspectives because there's been times post-reversion where I've been like, oh man, everybody needs to know this right now and needs to convert to Catholicism in this moment. And there's been other times since then where I've been like, oh my gosh, how could I ask anybody to become Catholic with all the mess that's going on in the church?
Yeah.
And I felt the wave of certitude that Juice referred to of having this wealth of teaching and be able to say like, hey, it's definitely that. There's not like a cloud of uncertainty in this. But I think what's actually really carried me through since then is the aggressive teaching of the church on mercy. There's an awesome little book by Pope Francis. It's really like an interview with Pope Francis. It's very short. It's called The Name of God is Mercy. And he just goes really, really deep into how aggressively God wants to encounter all of us, all of humanity, no matter what our perspective is, no matter how much or little information about the faith, no matter how much or little maybe our perception of Catholicism or God in general has been damaged by what's happened around us or what other people have shown us. There's like a great story he's got in there where it's talking about a guy who was just a horrible person, I think killed a bunch of people, was horrible to women. And like the guy's in front of a confessor and the guy's trying to get any sort of confession out of him. And he's just like, are you sorry for, fornicating? Are you sorry for doing, stealing, murdering, all these things or whatever? And the guy's like, no, I didn't regret any of those. And then the priest asks him, are you sorry for being not sorry? And he's like, actually, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. And he's like, he's expressing remorse. It's an opening for mercy. So even with all these rules, with all the history of the magisterium, the aggressive stance of the church is that God is about bringing mercy to the world.
Yeah, I fully respect that. And in our world today of everything goes culture, I appreciate the firmness. I do. I could only respect that.
Yeah.
So, and I would hope that more Protestants would.
Yeah, to add quickly to that question of mercy, to tie that in to stuff I said earlier, it's like God's mercy is a radical mercy. It's an unrelenting mercy that desires to possess the entire world. It desires to possess everybody. And the implications of that is that this mercy is so crucial for everybody to have that we can't presume that somebody who does have invincible ignorance, who doesn't know about Jesus, like we can't just leave that person off and be like, okay, if that person doesn't know that Jesus is the only way, then they're okay. They're not going to go to hell or anything like that. No, that's not a guarantee. We're supposed to hand the gospel to every creature. And so when it comes to somebody who doesn't know about Jesus, tell them about Jesus. Because the only sure guaranteed way of going to heaven and being with God forever is through Jesus. And so you can't presume that somebody who doesn't know about Jesus, maybe doesn't know, are going to go to heaven just because they're ignorant. Because God doesn't even want them to be ignorant. God wants them to come to the fullness. God wants them to come to knowledge of Jesus himself. And so even if somebody who we may know that doesn't know about Jesus, we should still tell them about Jesus. We can't assume that ignorance will kind of save them. And it's the same thing, and that's the crucial point. It's the same thing in regards to what I was saying about the fullness of the Catholic faith as well. It's like if somebody like doesn't know that the fullness of the truth is the Catholic Church, is Catholicism, tell them. Yeah. And bottom line, we're not to like fail to trust in God's mercy so much that we don't tell people about Jesus and about his church, about his Catholic Church, and leave people in ignorance because they may be saved. They because if they don't know, no, we're failing in our duty.
Yeah,
when we don't tell people about the fullness of the faith, and so that's the thing that's been on my mind. So I gotta get that in to cross my T's and dot my I's and stuff like that. And it's like, okay,
I agree.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, despite the flack I take, from my anti-Catholic family, I will still post stuff all the time on my Facebook page. I might have to delete a few comments here and there, but and mind you, the cool thing is that when they go back and they look at it, all the good things that have come out of my family has been from the Catholic side. You know, it's like when I came out of, the abuse that I came out of, it was my Catholic grandfather that took me in. When my sister escaped from an abusive household, it was the Catholic Church that took her in and helped her find a place. So it's every time that there's been help, it's been actually from the Catholic side. So it's been really interesting that way. So this has been an awesome night.
Yeah.
So
great learning experience. Wow.
Yeah. This has been an awesome night.
Yep.
I'm going to go around the table real quick. Justin, we can find you at where?
You can find me like 3 places. Again, you can basically through my apostolate, Black Catholic, and it's just one word, Black Catholic. You can find me on my website at theblackcatholic.com. That's where my blog is at. You can also find me on Facebook and Twitter. Just look up Black Catholic, and I should be, just like I said, one of the first pages there, because there's not a lot of active Black Catholic pages anyway. So that's one of the first ones that pop up, and you click on there, and like if you see me or see like Father Tolton on there and everything like that, Black Catholic, and my tagline is Catholicism through a colored lens. So you see Black Catholic and you see Catholicism through a colored lens. That's me. Again, website, theblackcatholic.com, and I'm on Facebook and I'm on Twitter. So hit me up.
And I really think everybody should go out and read his articles. Very well written articles. Nate, where can we find you?
Forget about me, man. Go to the website that I help run, Black Catholic Messenger. We're blackcatholicmessenger.com. Facebook username is also Black Catholic Messenger. Instagram, same. Twitter, you can search for our name, we'll pop up, but our user tag is BLKCTH Stories, because Twitter doesn't like long usernames. But yeah, that's what I spend most of my time on. I do have a personal website, natemup.com, NATEMUP, but go read Black Catholic Messenger. That's all I got to say about that.
Can our listeners subscribe to your newsletter yet?
There is a Black Catholic Messenger newsletter, sort of. There's a button on our website for it, but right now we're just sending out certain stories when we post them. Mm-hmm. We're working on the, more fancy newsletter with multiple stories and other messages. But yeah, you can subscribe on
Awesome.
blackcatholicmessenger.com.
Awesome. We look forward to it. And all of our listeners, please make sure you check us out on Facebook, on Patreon. By the way, pay for our beers. We'll keep making content. Pay for our beers. They're not cheap.
We'll drink more if you pay for the beers.
Yeah. In fact, I'll make you a deal. If you endorse us from any state, we will endorse your beers. So, yeah, I'm telling you. All you have to do, go to our Patreon or our Anchor FM page, anchor.fm/Bible Over Brews. If you give to us in either site, tell us you gave to us. Tell us what state it is. We will find a brewery from your state and we will endorse you. And you can find us on any social media platform. We're on all of them. All right? So,
nothing
Gumbi?
taboo over brew.
Keith?
I was just going to, if you have any doubts in your faith after this episode, if you're not sure if you believe in God or not, in this holiday season, you're an agnostic. Agnostic.
Where's the bell?
Sorry, I had to go there.